The CIA's biggest mistake in history. During what we call delta sleep at night, which everyone experiences, there is a strong probability, according to our research, that this is the time when people enter an out-of-body state. You don't remember it, but it does take place. In 2003, the CIA made a mistake so massive that it could collapse everything we've been taught about life, death, and reality itself. They accidentally declassified a document that wasn't just sensitive, it was dangerous. This document proves what happens after you die and why everything you've been told is a lie. This wasn't just another intelligence briefing. This was a high-level, top-secret CIA investigation into human consciousness, an experiment so profound that it shook military scientists to their core. They didn't just explore the idea of life after death. They confirmed it, they documented it, and then buried it, because if the public ever discovered the truth hidden in these pages, governments, religions, and entire systems of control would crumble overnight. But now, it's too late to hide it. I've spent months analyzing every page of this declassified intelligence report, breaking down its secrets piece by piece. What I found is more than shocking. It's reality-breaking. If you've ever felt like something doesn't add up about the way the world works, this is the missing piece. The worst part? This isn't speculation. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's documented government research. By the time this video ends, you'll know exactly why they kept this from you and why knowing the truth could change your life forever. Do you believe the government is hiding something even bigger than this? Drop a yes in the comments now. What if I told you that in 2003, the CIA accidentally declassified a document that proved human consciousness does not die with the body? Not a theory, not a belief. A classified intelligence report that the government quietly slipped into public records, hoping no one would notice. Because if they did, if people truly understood what was inside, it could unravel the very foundations of religion, government, and science as we know them. This report, known as the Gateway Process, was part of a military-backed experiment that started in the 1970s. They were not investigating this out of curiosity. They were studying how to control human consciousness, how to manipulate, weaponize, and even separate it from the physical body. This was never about enlightenment. It was about power. But here's the part they never wanted you to read. Buried deep in this classified research is something that changes everything, a scientific breakdown proving that your mind exists beyond space and time. According to the findings, consciousness is not created by the brain, but tuned into it, like a radio picking up a signal. Your thoughts, your awareness, your very identity do not originate in your body. And when you die, you don't stop existing, you just change frequency. The man at the center of this research was Robert Monroe, a radio engineer turned consciousness explorer. The secret document that changes everything. Monroe wasn't just a scientist, he was a pioneer who accidentally stumbled upon a way to leave his body at will. What started as a personal experience became one of the most classified military projects in history. Monroe's findings were so accurate, so dangerously real, that the U.S. Army funded his research and sent Lieutenant Colonel Wayne McDonnell to document every single aspect of his experiments. McDonnell, a military intelligence officer with no spiritual background, was given one job: determine whether human consciousness could be controlled, manipulated, or enhanced. His final report wasn't speculation. It was a detailed scientific breakdown of what happens when the brain enters altered states. What he uncovered went far beyond military applications. He found proof that reality is nothing like what we've been told. He discovered that the human mind, when trained properly, can leave the body, move through space and time, access information beyond physical limitations, and even alter the very fabric of reality itself. Through Monroe's techniques, binaural beats, and hemispheric synchronization, Subjects could enter deep altered states, experiencing out-of-body travel, telepathic communication, and direct access to hidden knowledge. But here's the divine truth. The CIA didn't just study this. They used it for decades. The U.S. military trained psychic spies to remotely view classified enemy sites, retrieve intelligence from thousands of miles away, and even predict future events. And it worked. Former CIA operatives have confirmed that these experiments were too successful, to the point where intelligence agencies feared the implications. If consciousness could move beyond the physical body, then what else was possible? Could thoughts be weaponized? Could reality be influenced? And the biggest question of all, if death isn't real, how do you control people who no longer fear it? Governments, religions, and entire power structures depend on fear of the unknown, fear of punishment, fear of mortality. Imagine if the public knew that dying is just a transition, that consciousness doesn't fade but simply shifts to a different vibrational state. The fear that keeps people obedient, that fuels wars, that drives entire economies, it vanishes. That's why the Gateway Process report was buried for decades. Not because it wasn't real, but because it was too real. And yet, here it is, hidden in plain sight. So the question is no longer, does consciousness survive death? That answer has already been proven. The real question is, what else have they been hiding? The most dangerous document ever declassified doesn't just suggest that death isn't real. It lays out the scientific blueprint, proving that consciousness survives beyond the body. Think about this for a second. If your consciousness isn't created by your brain but instead tuned in like a signal, then what happens when your physical body stops functioning? According to the CIA's own research, the answer to that question is so profoundly disruptive that they buried it for decades. Modern science has conditioned you to believe that your thoughts, memories, and identity are nothing more than electrical impulses inside your brain, that when your neurons stop firing, you disappear. Game over. But the Gateway Process rips this idea apart. What if your brain isn't a generator of consciousness at all, but merely a receiver, just like a radio picks up a signal? Broadcasts. Your brain could be tuning into your brain, could be tuning into a consciousness that exists outside of physical reality itself. This model explains mysteries that conventional science refuses to acknowledge, why people experience intuition, why creativity seems to come from nowhere, and why near-death experiences are strikingly identical across cultures and time periods. The human mind is tapping into something bigger, an unseen field of intelligence that extends beyond the body. What the Gateway Process really proves, the CIA didn't just theorize about this, they experimented on it. The Gateway Process used precise sound frequencies to manipulate brainwave activity and trigger altered states of consciousness. The technique was based on something called hemispheric synchronization, a method of using binaural beats to make both sides of the brain function as one, unlocking an expanded perception of reality. Once participants reached this state, they began experiencing awareness beyond their physical body. The frequencies used in these experiments weren't random. The CIA specifically targeted the theta, 4 to 7 Hz, and delta, 0.5 to 4 Hz, brainwave states, the same frequencies observed during deep meditation, out-of-body experiences, and even moments right before death. The implications are staggering. They weren't just inducing relaxation, they were systematically training people to separate their consciousness from their body. But here's where it gets even more shocking. Quantum mechanics backs this up. At the quantum level, matter isn't even solid. It exists as a probability wave until consciousness observes it. The Gateway Report explains that consciousness itself is the force that collapses reality into form. That means your awareness isn't something your body produces. It's the architect of your entire experience. The document goes even further, describing reality as a holographic system where each part of existence contains the entire blueprint of the whole. If consciousness is an interference pattern within this greater hologram, then accessing new states of consciousness isn't just about altering perception, it's about tuning into a larger reality. This is why the gateway process wasn't just about meditation or brainwaves. It was a practical method for unlocking human potential that transcends space and time. The most forbidden discovery: what happens when you die? The CIA's research confirmed that consciousness doesn't vanish, it transitions. The document explains that the frequency of human awareness simply shifts to different vibrational planes, aligning perfectly with the most fundamental law of physics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. What we call death is not an end, it's a frequency shift. Your unique pattern of awareness continues, just outside the range of ordinary perception. The Gateway researchers discovered something extraordinary. Consciousness exists in multiple states, what they called focus levels. In our daily lives, we function in Focus 1, physical reality awareness. But through the Gateway techniques, participants could enter deeper states. Focus 10, a state where the body is asleep but the mind is awake. Focus 12, expanded awareness, perception beyond the physical senses. Focus 15, the experience of timelessness, where past, present, and future collapse into one. Beyond that, even deeper levels suggest reality is far more complex than we've been led to believe. The report describes in chilling detail what happens during the moment of transition, what we call death. It suggests that when freed from the body, consciousness expands exponentially, no longer limited by the filtering mechanisms of the brain or the illusion of linear time. Imagine experiencing every moment of your existence at once, past, present, and future, as a single, unified whole. This is where the real danger of this document lies. If death is simply a transition into another form of existence, then the entire system of control that governs society, fear, survival, authority, begins to collapse. Robert Monroe and the military's involvement. If your consciousness is not confined to your body, if you cannot truly die in the way you've been told, then what does that mean for the way you live your life now? This document wasn't just hidden because of national security concerns. It was hidden because it exposes the greatest illusion of all, that you are just your body. The truth? You are something far greater than you've ever been told. Death may be the ultimate transition of consciousness, but the Gateway process exposed something even more unsettling. You don't have to die to experience it. What if the boundary between this world and what lies beyond isn't just passable, but trainable? The CIA's top-secret research didn't just speculate on whether consciousness exists beyond the body. They engineered a system that allowed anyone to do it. This wasn't a spiritual experiment. It wasn't some mystical practice reserved for monks or psychics. It was a military-grade training protocol developed under government supervision at the Monroe Institute. Unlike religious traditions that explored altered states through prayer or ritual, the CIA's approach was precise, mechanical, and backed by neuroscience. The goal wasn't enlightenment, it was control. If human consciousness could be separated from the body, could it be used as a weapon? At the core of this program was HemiSync, a classified sound technology that could literally reprogram the brain. These weren't the binaural beats you'll find on YouTube. They were carefully calibrated audio frequencies, played in each ear at slightly different rates, which forced the brain into synchronization, a phenomenon known as hemispheric coherence. When this happened, participants didn't just enter a meditative state. Their perception of reality shifted. The science behind consciousness beyond the body. The first step? Mastering Focus 10, the point where the body is asleep, but the mind remains fully conscious. Normally, people dip into this state just before drifting off, experiencing brief flashes of imagery or a feeling of weightlessness. The gateway process hacked this natural transition, allowing participants to extend and stabilize it at will. Once participants could hold this state, they advanced to Focus 12, where their awareness expanded beyond physical limitations. At this stage, they began accessing information they had no logical way of knowing, a phenomenon eerily similar to what psychics describe as remote viewing. Unlike vague visualizations, these were controlled, verifiable experiments. Subjects were given hidden objects to describe, asked to locate unknown targets, or even tasked with gathering intelligence from foreign locations. But the most shocking revelations came at Focus 15, a state the CIA dubbed the realm outside time. Participants reported the complete dissolution of linear time, describing past, present, and future as coexisting in a vast, singular now. Some claimed they could shift their perception at will, observing historical events not as memories, but as though they were unfolding in real time. If true, this suggests that time as we experience it is nothing more than a perception filter. And when that filter is removed, reality reveals itself as something far stranger than we've ever imagined. The CIA's real motivation. Here's where things take an even darker turn. The CIA wasn't interested in spiritual awakening. They were hunting for strategic advantages. They wanted to know, could consciousness be used for intelligence gathering? Could operatives access classified information across vast distances without ever leaving their physical location? The answer was yes. One of the most famous cases was Joseph McMonigal, a military intelligence officer and one of the program's most successful remote viewers. During one experiment, he accurately described a Soviet nuclear submarine under construction, thousands of miles away. His description was later confirmed by satellite imagery. He wasn't using cameras. He wasn't on location. His consciousness simply perceived it. Then there's Ingo Swann, whose abilities pushed the boundaries even further. In a controlled setting, Swann was tasked with describing Jupiter, a planet he had never studied. His descriptions were shockingly accurate, including details about Jupiter's rings, a feature that wasn't confirmed by NASA until years later when Voyager 1 reached the planet. The implications are terrifying. If human consciousness can access hidden knowledge across dimensions, then what does that say about the true nature of existence? And here's the most unsettling part. This ability wasn't reserved for the gifted. The gateway process proved that anyone with the right training could separate their awareness from their body. This isn't just a discovery located hidden submarines, identified concealed weapon systems, and even described the interiors of foreign embassies, all while sitting in a room in the United States. But the most extraordinary reports weren't about locations on Earth. Some participants moved beyond the limits of our familiar three-dimensional space altogether. They described experiencing dimensions where time didn't exist, where reality itself operated under completely different laws. Some reported accessing multiple locations simultaneously, as if their awareness had expanded beyond linear perception. And then came the most unsettling discovery. Many participants, isolated from one another, described encounters with intelligent, non-physical beings. These weren't ghosts, hallucinations, or subconscious projections. They were coherent, self-aware entities that seemed to inhabit these other realms permanently. Some gateway explorers reported receiving information or direct communication from these entities, information that later proved verifiable in our physical world. What does that mean? Are we surrounded by conscious intelligences that exist beyond human perception? Have we been conditioned to ignore an unseen reality that has always existed just beyond our senses? Time itself became irrelevant in these states. Participants reported accessing information from both past and potential future events. Some described witnessing history firsthand, as though they had traveled back in time, not as an observer recalling memories, but as if they were physically there. Others glimpsed future possibilities, describing them not as fixed events, but as shifting probabilities influenced by present choices. The implications were staggering. The CIA and military weren't interested in philosophy or spirituality, they were interested in results. These experiments weren't about proving remote viewing, astral travel, or time manipulation, they were about using them. If the Soviets were training their operatives in similar methods, then the Cold War wasn't just being fought with nuclear weapons and spies, it was being fought on the battleground of human consciousness itself. But beyond the military applications, a deeper and more terrifying revelation emerged. If consciousness can operate outside the body, if trained individuals can access information beyond physical space and time, then what does that say about death? These experiments didn't just suggest that awareness could temporarily separate from the body, they strongly indicated that consciousness isn't bound to the body at all. This realization terrified government officials more than any intelligence leak ever could. The participants who reached the deepest states of consciousness experienced something even more radical. Their sense of self dissolved. They no longer identified as individuals confined to a single body. Instead, they reported an overwhelming sense that their consciousness was not separate from the universe, but was part of a vast, interconnected field of awareness. They weren't perceiving the world, they were the world itself, aware of its own existence. And if that's true, then what happens at the moment of death isn't an ending. It's a transition, a shift from one state of awareness to another. The government had uncovered something far bigger than they ever anticipated, and they knew that if the public ever truly understood this, the entire system of control, fear, obedience, manipulation, would collapse. This wasn't just research. This was the greatest secret in human history. What happens at the edge of death? Death isn't just theoretical. It has been experienced by millions of ordinary people. While government researchers were using advanced technology to induce out-of-body states, regular people across the world were experiencing the same phenomena naturally, during cardiac arrests, traumatic injuries, and near-fatal accidents. These near-death experiences, NDEs, provided something the gateway process never could: raw, unfiltered proof that consciousness exists beyond the brain, with no scientific manipulation involved. The patterns in these experiences are eerily consistent, regardless of geography, culture, or personal beliefs. A cardiac surgeon in Seattle hears the same accounts as a fisherman in Indonesia or a grandmother in Brazil. People describe floating above their bodies, watching medical teams work on them with shocking clarity. They describe moving through what many call a tunnel of light, encountering deceased relatives or beings of light who communicate directly with their consciousness. Some experience a life review, where they relive key moments not just from their own perspective, but from the perspective of everyone they've ever impacted. And perhaps most importantly, they return forever changed, with a newfound clarity, a profound sense of purpose, and a near-total loss of fear of death. Why governments feared this knowledge? Dr. Sam Parnia, one of the world's foremost NDE researchers at NYU Langone Medical Center, has studied thousands of cardiac arrest survivors. He found that 10% of them report vivid, structured experiences during periods when their brains show no measurable activity. What's remarkable, he notes, is that these experiences occur when the brain is too compromised to create complex, lucid hallucinations. Even more shocking, many of these individuals return with verifiable information they could not have known through any conventional means. Take the case of Maria, a worker who suffered a cardiac arrest in a Seattle hospital. While being resuscitated, she later described floating outside the hospital, where she noticed a tennis shoe on a third-floor ledge with its lace tucked under the heel and a worn patch near the toe. A skeptical social worker went to check and found the shoe exactly as Maria described, visible only from outside the building. Maria had never been anywhere near that side of the hospital. This isn't an isolated case. A 2014 study published in Resuscitation documented 2,060 cardiac arrest survivors, revealing that those who reported awareness during clinical death could accurately describe events that occurred while they had no heartbeat or brain activity. Some even recalled detailed conversations and the exact movements of medical staff, accounts that were later verified against hospital records. These findings mirror ancient spiritual wisdom that has been preserved for thousands of years. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, written in the 8th century, provides step-by-step instructions for navigating consciousness after physical death, descriptions that align with modern NDE reports with disturbing accuracy. The ancient Egyptians believed the soul traveled through the Duat, or underworld, undergoing trials that eerily resemble the life reviews reported in NDEs. Indigenous shamans worldwide have practiced techniques for journeying beyond the body, accessing realms that sound exactly like the ones described by both gateway process participants and near-death survivors. Even the CIA researchers themselves recognize this connection. Their classified gateway documents acknowledge that spontaneous NDEs closely match the states of consciousness their participants were trained to access through structured protocols. Both experiences indicated that consciousness was not confined to the brain, but could access a larger reality that followed specific, repeatable patterns. So, why does mainstream science still struggle to accept this? The gateway process offers the missing key. If consciousness functions as a frequency, as the document suggests, then cardiac arrest or trauma might simply shift that frequency temporarily, allowing awareness to perceive beyond the normal physical limitations of the brain. This would explain why NDEs follow the same patterns across cultures, religions, and belief systems. It's not about what they believe, it's about what they're accessing. Just like how different radio receivers pick up the same station when tuned to the right frequency, human consciousness may be capable of tuning into the same post-physical reality when the body begins to shut down. Perhaps the most mind-blowing evidence comes from NDEs reported by blind individuals, including those who were blind from birth. These people describe detailed visual experiences, seeing for the first time in their lives, and later accurately recount objects, people, and settings they never could have known existed. This suggests that perception is not dependent on the physical senses, but rather an intrinsic property of consciousness itself, exactly as the gateway process proposed. The connection between quantum physics and reality. Dr. Bruce Grayson, one of the world's leading NDE researchers at the University of Virginia, has spent over 4 decades studying these cases. His conclusion? The evidence suggests that consciousness can function independently of the brain under certain conditions. This challenges our entire understanding of the mind-brain relationship in profound ways. And that's the terrifying part. The gateway process wasn't discovering something new, it was systematically proving what humanity has always known. The CIA wasn't exploring theoretical metaphysics. They were developing a method to reliably access realms that mystics, shamans, and those at death's door had already been visiting for millennia. And once you realize that, it becomes impossible to ignore the bigger question. If people across all of history have been experiencing this, and if modern science is now proving it, what else have we been conditioned to forget? But accessing other realms was just the beginning. The deeper the CIA researchers went, the more terrifying their discoveries became. They weren't just mapping space, they were unraveling time itself. What shook government officials wasn't just that consciousness continues after death. It was the realization that time, as we know it, doesn't even exist. The past, present, and future aren't separate at all. They're happening at the same time, and once you understand why this truth was hidden, you'll never look at reality the same way again. The most explosive revelation from the gateway process wasn't about other dimensions or life after death. It was about the illusion of time itself. Buried within the classified documents lies a mind-bending concept, linear time. The idea that events unfold in a sequence is nothing more than a limitation of human perception. Think about it. Every choice you've made, every moment you've lived, every future event you fear or anticipate, it all exists at once. The Gateway researchers found that our perception of time flowing forward is just a function of our physical brain processing reality frame by frame. But just like a movie reel, the entire film already exists. Past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously. For the first time in history, scientific experiments confirmed what mystics, shamans, and ancient texts have whispered for centuries. Participants in Focus 15, a state beyond linear time, reported something impossible. They could perceive events from different time periods as if they were happening right now. One described it as standing at the center of a vast wheel, where every moment of their life extended outward like spokes, their birth, their death, and every second in between, all simultaneously accessible. Another reported, "I realized time doesn't move, it's us. We move through it. The future isn't ahead of us, it already exists. We're just choosing which moment to experience." These weren't philosophical theories. They were direct, repeatable experiences from individuals who had no prior metaphysical beliefs. The CIA's own document connects this to quantum physics. At the quantum level, matter isn't solid. It exists as probability waves until observed. That means consciousness itself is what collapses possibilities into reality. If all moments exist at once, then cause and effect don't happen in a straight line. They coexist in ways that shatter everything we think we know about reality. This lines up precisely with the work of physicist John Wheeler and his delayed choice experiment, which suggests that observations made in the present can influence past events. Even Einstein's block universe theory aligns with this, describing time as a four-dimensional structure where all moments already exist, complete and unchanging. We just experience them one at a time because of our limited perspective, and here's why this truth is so dangerous. If time is an illusion, then what happens to control systems built around it? Religious institutions that control people with promises of heaven or threats of hell. What happens when people realize that all versions of reality exist simultaneously? Political and economic systems that trap people in fear of the future. What happens when people realize they're not bound to a linear fate? Most disturbing of all is what this means for death itself. If time isn't real, then death isn't an end. It's simply a shift in perspective. The moment your consciousness leaves your body, you don't just continue existing, you expand beyond the limitations of linear time. A gateway process participant described it like this: "It wasn't that I saw the future, it was that I realized the future is already here." Death isn't the end of anything, it's just consciousness moving to a different perspective, like changing channels on a radio. This reframes everything. It suggests that your physical brain is just a filter designed to narrow down reality so you can function in a three-dimensional world. But the moment that filter is removed, whether through deep altered states, near-death experiences, or even death itself, your consciousness expands into its true nature, where time is no longer a prison, but a vast, infinite landscape, where all possibilities exist at once. This is the biggest secret. It's not just about life after death, it's about life itself. Because once you realize that every moment already exists, you stop living in fear, you stop being manipulated, and you start choosing reality on your own terms. And that's exactly what they don't want. When you pierce the veil of time, a chilling realization comes into focus. Powerful institutions have spent centuries deliberately suppressing the truth about consciousness. And I'm not talking about wild conspiracy theories. I mean the systematic design of civilization itself, built on the illusion of death as the ultimate control mechanism. What happens to governments, religions, and economies when people discover that death, the most powerful fear in human history, isn't real? That's the terrifying question at the heart of this deception. Because once you understand that your consciousness continues beyond physical life, everything they've built to control you begins to fall apart. Think about how deeply the fear of death is woven into the fabric of society. Religious institutions claim to hold the keys to the afterlife, demanding obedience in exchange for salvation. Governments use mortality as a tool through war, imprisonment, and systemic oppression to enforce compliance. Even the economy thrives on this fear, pushing people into a lifelong race for security through money, status, and possessions, all to avoid the one thing they can't outrun. But what happens when millions suddenly wake up to the truth that consciousness transcends death? Would people still blindly submit to those who have weaponized their deepest fear? Would they still spend their lives chasing wealth if they realized that experiences, not possessions, are what their consciousness carries forward? Religions built their power by controlling the afterlife narrative. By claiming to be the sole gatekeepers of salvation, they extracted wealth, obedience, and even blood from followers for millennia. Billions live in fear of divine punishment, surrendering their autonomy to institutions that claim only they know what happens after death. And then there's science, which, despite its incredible advancements, has inadvertently become another mechanism of control. The dominant materialist worldview tells us that consciousness is just an illusion, a biological accident that ends when the brain shuts down. That belief breeds existential despair, turning people toward consumerism, distraction, and blind trust in authority to cope with the meaninglessness of it all. The gateway process destroys both these narratives because it doesn't require faith or dogma. It offers something far more dangerous: direct personal verification. Anyone can learn these techniques. You don't need religious intermediaries or academic credentials, just the right tools to expand consciousness beyond physical limits. The most revolutionary part? This knowledge doesn't belong to any institution, any government, or any elite group. It's always been available, hidden in plain sight. The real threat of the gateway process is that it merges science and spirituality. It's not a belief system. It's a replicable, measurable experience that allows you to verify these truths yourself. No priests, no scientists, no politicians. Just you and your direct experience of reality. This is why the greatest shift in human history happens when people internalize one simple truth: you don't die. And the moment people stop fearing death, the systems designed to control them collapse. Imagine what happens when millions reject artificial scarcity and status games because they know they exist beyond this life. What happens when people prioritize developing their consciousness through wisdom, creativity, and deep human connection instead of blindly serving a system designed to keep them trapped in fear? Look at history. Every time someone has threatened the official death narrative, they've been silenced, exiled, or killed. Mystics, shamans, spiritual rebels, and even modern consciousness researchers, those who claim direct access to knowledge outside of institutional power, have been persecuted across cultures and time periods. The gateway process findings represent the biggest threat yet because they come wrapped in the language of science, the very authority modern civilization trusts most. And that's exactly why this information was classified for decades. Because when people truly understand that their awareness continues beyond physical death, something profound happens. They stop being afraid. They stop being manipulated. They stop trading their freedom for security. People who realize they are more than their physical body make different choices. They are harder to control. They refuse to be governed by fear, and that's why they never wanted you to know. If you've made it this far, something inside you has already shifted. You're not just hearing this, you're feeling it. Because deep down, you've always known something was off. Maybe it was the way time feels strangely familiar, like you've lived this all before. Maybe it was the dreams you've had, the ones that feel too real, like echoes from another existence. Maybe it was the moments of intuition, the gut feelings, the sudden insights that science tells you are random. But deep down, you know they're not. For your entire life, you've been told that you are just a body, living in a fixed linear reality. But the truth is, you're not just a body. You're not just a brain producing thoughts. You're not just a random collection of atoms destined to disappear. The declassified gateway process didn't just confirm that consciousness survives death. It proved that your mind is not confined to your body. It can exist beyond time. It can exist beyond space. And if you know how to access it, you can prove this for yourself. This is what they never wanted you to figure out, because once you do, the entire system that controls society, the fear, the limitations, the false beliefs, collapses. And here's the real reason this is dangerous to them. This isn't just knowledge, it's a skill. And once you learn it, nothing can control you again. Here's how to exit the system. Because for decades, intelligence agencies studied not just what consciousness is, but how to manipulate and use it. And they spent millions because they discovered that the human mind, when trained, can do things that defy our current understanding of reality. They confirmed that your brain is a receiver, not a generator, meaning your thoughts and awareness exist outside of your physical body. And if you can learn to shift the station your consciousness is tuned to, you can access information, experiences, and states of awareness beyond the physical world. The gateway process wasn't just theory. It was a repeatable method for accessing these higher states of awareness. Now, instead of just listening, you're going to learn how to do this for yourself. Step 1. Train your mind to separate from the body. The first breakthrough in the gateway process was hemispheric synchronization, getting both sides of your brain to function in perfect balance. Why is this important? Because when the logical, analytical left brain and the intuitive, creative right brain function as one, something changes. Your perception expands. Your awareness shifts. Your ability to detach from physical reality becomes stronger. The CIA achieved this using hemisync sound frequencies, specific binaural beats that bring the brain into synchronization. Try this. Find a quiet space. Use binaural beats in the theta range, 4 to 7 Hz. These are the frequencies the gateway process used. Sit or lie down in total stillness. Close your eyes and breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and exhale for 6 seconds. This lowers your brainwave state. After 10 to 15 minutes, your body will start to enter a sleep-like state while your mind remains awake. This is Focus 10 in the gateway process, the first step in separating your awareness from your physical form. Step 2. Expand your consciousness. Beyond the physical, once your body is asleep but your mind is alert, the next step is moving into Focus 12, the state where your awareness expands beyond your 5 senses. In gateway experiments, participants who entered this state consistently perceived things beyond their physical surroundings. Some could see distant locations. Some could access knowledge they had never been exposed to. Some could even describe events before they happened. Why? Because once your brain is in the right state, your consciousness is no longer locked inside your body. It's like tuning into a radio station that was always there, but you never knew how to access. How to practice this? As your body relaxes, focus on the space around you. Start to visualize yourself outside of your body. Imagine your awareness stretching outward, beyond your room, beyond your house, beyond your city. Don't force it. Just observe. If you practice this daily, you'll start to notice something strange. Your perception will change. Your dreams will become more vivid. Your intuition will sharpen. You'll start knowing things before they happen. And that's just the beginning. Step 3. Accessing the greater reality. The deepest state described in the gateway process is Focus 15, the state where time itself collapses.